I found myself in a tight spot when my drunken boss coerced me into hitting on a Latina woman. My Spanish is terrible, but I innocently parroted what he told me, prawn nada, which I later learned means you look like a prawn nada. Suddenly, the air around us froze. A slap flew from the woman. You really suck at Spanish. Ha. Pa. That's hilarious. My boss wasn't just laughing at my humiliation. He was filming it on his smartphone. When I woke up the next day, my phone was bombarded with notifications. You're famous worldwide now. You're done for. My name is Joseph. I'm a typical office worker at a small to medium-sized company in New York. I describe myself as diligent, reliably getting through work. At 24, I married my high school sweetheart, and recently we welcomed a daughter. Although work keeps me busy, I lead a fulfilling life both personally and professionally. I work in the sales department, visiting clients daily, often leading to overtime. My wife always encourages me, saying, "Leave Maddie to me and focus on your work," which helps me get through it all. On weekends, I tackle house chores, but my wife reassures me, saying, "You're tired from working long hours. Don't worry, let me handle this." She's very dependable. Despite this, I sometimes face challenges at work. My direct boss, Mr. Johnson, is a lightweight and unreliable. He often speaks nonsense to clients, causing complaints, and I find myself cleaning up his messes. He got the managerial position despite lacking skills, probably because he's a distant relative of the company president. It's an open secret in the office. I've been dealing with the impossible demands he places on me. However, Mr. Johnson has a likable personality and a knack for quickly building rapport with new clients, a skill I haven't fully developed yet. Despite everything, I believe we've built a good relationship based on mutual reliance. But there's one thing I wish Mr. Johnson would stop doing: getting drunk at parties and ordering me to pick up random women. I've refused several times, feeling guilty towards my wife and knowing women would be annoyed by me approaching them. However, once Mr. Johnson gets drunk, he becomes tyrannical and threatens. If you don't do as I say, you're fired. Apparently, Mr. Johnson, a single man, gets jealous of me for marrying young. At these drinking parties, he always brings trouble to me with his unreasonable demands. Even though I know it's unreasonable, I can't defy him, so I reluctantly approach women, feeling guilty towards my wife. One day, after securing a major contract, our sales department held a celebration at a fancy Chinese restaurant. The mood was upbeat. As the night progressed and everyone got tipsy, Mr. Johnson, already wasted, ordered me to hit on women as usual. I felt a rebellious urge, influenced by alcohol. Mr. Johnson pointed out a brunette Latina woman at a table. I refused, saying I couldn't hit on a foreigner, especially since I couldn't speak Spanish. Mr. Johnson dismissed my words and insisted, "It's fine, just go and tell her, presa zapa." With no knowledge of Spanish, I asked what that meant. He replied, "It's a way to describe a slim and stylish woman. Don't worry, it's a basic compliment phrase." Trusting his words, I approached the Latina woman. I awkwardly started with, "Hello, how are you?" She kindly replied with an excited, "Oh yeah." Confused, I glanced back at my table. There was Mr. Johnson with his smartphone, moving, "Hurry up, say it, or you're fired." Realizing I couldn't fake it, I braced myself and said, "You look like a prawn nada," in Spanish. The moment I spoke, everyone froze. The Latina woman stood up and slapped me. I was so shocked that I sank down to the floor, not understanding what just happened. I was completely lost, leaving me behind. The woman became emotional and started yelling at me in rapid Spanish. Frozen, I remembered her reaction right before she got angry. She was responding to "Pesa Zuna Puta." That's when I realized I'd been tricked by Mr. Johnson. Feeling intense anger towards Mr. Johnson, I knew I had to apologize to the woman. I repeatedly apologized. Her blonde friend, who came to dine with her, calmed her down, and in broken English, said, "It's okay, brother, leave this to me." After I apologized once again, I returned to my seat. When I returned to my seat, I found Mr. Johnson there, holding his smartphone and laughing uproariously. He told me the truth, laughing, "You really are terrible at Spanish. I'll teach you. What you said to her means you look like a H." That was so funny that even I got angry and retorted, "Mr. Johnson, I've already told you I want you to stop these unreasonable demands to hit on women. And now you've made me insult a woman I don't even know, a complete stranger. This is going too far." However, Mr. Johnson showed no signs of remorse and mocked me, saying, "It's your fault for not understanding Spanish. Why are you getting all upset with me? It's true that I can't speak Spanish, but that's exactly why I asked for clarification. And it was Mr. Johnson who gave me the misleading information." I looked around for help, but either everyone found it funny that I couldn't speak Spanish, or they just averted their eyes, trying to suppress their laughter. Even I was infuriated by this situation, and although some colleagues tried to calm me down, it wasn't enough to quell my anger, and I left the scene. The next day, I woke up to incomprehensible messages on my phone. "Is this the number of rubbish of society? You're a disgrace to the States. Never go outside again." I received these unfathomable insults from unknown email addresses and phone numbers. Groggy, I initially thought these were spam or scam messages. However, as I scrutinized the messages, I realized they were all criticizing last night's incident. Why they know about it? I was terrified, covered in goosebumps, and my mind went blank. Why am I receiving so many messages from unknown people? Despite feeling sick and scared, I scoured through the messages to find a cause. That's when I found a video posted on a certain social media platform. It was a short video, only a few seconds in length, capturing me getting slapped by the foreign woman after saying an inappropriate phrase in Spanish. The comment section was filled with harsh criticisms, such as, "a disgrace to the American people," "a stain on the face of the States." There were messages in foreign languages which I couldn't read. The video was uploaded anonymously on social media. However, there was no blurring or pixelation on myself, the woman, or the restaurant to conceal our identities. That's it. I tracked down the address of this idiot. I found out the company he works for. Interestingly, their stock price is plummeting. Quite hilarious. My identity was already exposed on the internet, including my real name, social media ID, address, and workplace. Fortunately, it seemed the foreign woman was only shown from behind, so her identity wasn't exposed, but my social media account was flooded with baseless messages. The notifications just kept increasing instead of decreasing. I turned off all notifications, but the situation had already spiraled out of control. Friends were calling me to confirm if it was me, but I couldn't dare to answer the phone due to the numerous calls from unknown bashers. I explained the situation to my wife and borrowed her phone to contact a close friend. I told them that I was deceived by my boss into saying those words and that the video was edited to emphasize the incident. However, I sincerely apologized to the woman. Unfortunately, the video is already on the internet, and my personal information, such as my phone number, is out there as well. Because of this, I hesitate to make calls. I asked my friends to spread the word that it was a setup and a false accusation. Lastly, I informed them that my phone is in chaos, so I can't be reached. Despite the morning chaos, I went to work to confront Mr. Johnson. Due to the video on social media, my company had been exposed, and by the time I arrived, there were onlookers who had probably seen the infamous video gathered at the company's entrance. Unable to enter through the main door in such a situation, I went in through the back door. The office was in chaos. The receptionists and call center agents were overwhelmed by inquiries and prank calls. As a result, shortly after I arrived at the office, I was summoned by the president and executives to explain the video. I informed them that the video footage was from yesterday's incident, that I had been deceived by Mr. Johnson, and explained that he was the one who filmed it and uploaded it on social media. After hearing my desperate plea, they responded, "All right, we understand your point. Let's discuss this with Mr. Johnson as well." Subsequently, Mr. Johnson was also summoned to join the discussion. Immediately, the president and executives addressed Mr. Johnson, asking, "You're aware of the video featuring your subordinate, Mr. Wayne, aren't you? He claims that he was deceived by you and that the video was recorded at that time. Is this true?" However, Mr. Johnson denied any involvement, saying, "I have no idea about that, and of course, I didn't record any such video. I would never force or deceive my subordinate like that. In fact, I was trying to stop him from hitting on women while drunk, but he wouldn't listen. In my attempt to intervene, we caused a bit of a commotion, and I felt the other customers' eyes on us. So, I think that video was probably taken and shared by another customer in the restaurant. The restaurant went particularly quiet when he was slapped. He made a false statement, purposely alleging that I willingly hit on women and denied my accusation of being deceived by him to engage in such misconduct, all in an attempt to absolve himself of any responsibility. But I countered his claims. His statements are all false. Mr. Johnson has a drinking problem. Every time he drinks, he never fails to pressure me into these unreasonable demands. It's not just an isolated incident from yesterday, it's a recurring pattern. I've pleaded with him to stop, but he threatens to fire me if I don't comply, and his demands have been escalating. This is the result, Mr. President. If you call the sales department employees who regularly join us for drinks, they can confirm the truth. I appealed to the president and executives, but the president, perhaps wanting to protect Mr. Johnson, who is a distant relative, deflected the issue and suggested that the real problem was my behavior. Even when I argued that I was deceived by Mr. Johnson, they responded, "Even if you were deceived, the problem is that you didn't avoid the situation and acted on it. Did you really believe Mr. Johnson could fire you on his own? Besides, your lack of basic Spanish knowledge is also a problem. Why didn't you verify it yourself instead of just listening to him? Ultimately, it's your fault, and your actions have caused trouble for the company and affected our work." I was sternly reprimanded. Indeed, I must bear some responsibility for my lack of knowledge. However, I couldn't accept that Mr. Johnson's tyranny was being shifted onto me as my responsibility. I tried to argue further, but ultimately, I couldn't go against the president. I was held responsible and ultimately dismissed from my job. Dejectedly, I returned to the sales department and began to pack up my belongings at my desk. Mr. Johnson, who returned a bit later, approached me with a laugh. As soon as he saw me, he mocked, "You were ridiculous till the end. Now you're exposed, not just in the States but worldwide. You're finished." Infuriated by Mr. Johnson's unrepentant attitude, I confronted him. "Mr. Johnson, I'm fired now, so let me speak plainly. You've ruined my life with your lies and fabrications. I have a wife and child. How are you going to make this right?" Yet Mr. Johnson, showing no sign of remorse, replied with a laugh, "You should take responsibility for your own actions. What are you going to do? Resort to violence? That would really ruin your life." He even added disdainfully, "The problem is that a low-level employee like you brags about being married and having kids as if your life is so fulfilling. You really are a fool for not understanding such basic things." No matter what I said, he never seemed to understand. Considering the ongoing circumstances in the office, there was no chance for me to win. I felt the urge to yell out in anger, but doing so would only prove that what Mr. Johnson said was correct and truly ruined my life. In the end, there was no other option but to resign. There was nothing I could do. I left the company with a heavy heart, feeling helpless, losing my job, and facing difficulties in finding new employment. I worried about how I would support my family. I wondered how I was going to provide for my wife and child from now on. As these thoughts troubled me on my way home from the office, I found unfamiliar people surrounding my house. I immediately hid, feeling a renewed sense of fear from the impact of social media. I managed to enter my house unnoticed through the back. Already informed of the situation, my wife anxiously asked, "Are you okay?" It seemed that while I was at work, onlookers who had seen the video gathered in front of our house. At first, they threw things and yelled, "Societal trash, come out." But my wife, remaining calm, called the police, and the commotion subsided. However, even then, the onlookers didn't leave. They didn't do anything further but stubbornly stayed in front of our house. The police apparently told us, "We can act if there's actual harm being done. But if there isn't, there's not much we can do." This left us in a situation where we couldn't even leave our house. If this situation persists, our daily lives will surely be greatly affected. Anyway, I have to tackle the situation immediately. First, I need to get my wife and child to a safe place. With that thought, I told my wife to stay at her parents' house. I checked the surroundings again through the back door and left the house as if fleeing in the night. I then escorted my wife and child to the train station. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. As I bid farewell to my wife, I put on a brave front and said, "Don't worry. The frenzy on social media is always intense at first. It'll probably settle down in a week. I'll manage somehow until then." With these words meant to reassure her, we parted ways for the time being. As I approached my home, I was frightened by the increased number of onlookers and couldn't enter my house. Instead, I sat dejectedly on a bench in a nearby park. Though I had reassured my wife earlier, I felt desperate, wondering what to do next. That's when a mysterious blonde woman appeared and approached me, saying, "There you are." I immediately braced myself, thinking she was one of the onlookers who had seen the video and come to my house. But soon, I realized she was the woman involved in yesterday's incident. She had dyed her hair, and I expected her to complain about my actions yesterday and the exposure on social media. I immediately started apologizing profusely as soon as I recognized her. However, the blonde woman started talking to me in fluent English, saying, "No need to apologize. I know it's not your fault. I'm Catherine. What's your name?" Bewildered, I replied, "My name is Joseph." Catherine shared a lot with me. She's quite a famous influencer, broadcasting about her life in the States to the outside world. She allegedly has many followers worldwide due to her beauty. She primarily posts pictures of famous spots to introduce them to her followers. Additionally, she creates videos containing content about her daily life for her followers in the States. Yesterday, she was at a dinner with a friend and wore a brunette wig to avoid being recognized by her fans. "That's why I'm blonde today," Catherine said, seemingly proud of her disguise. I watched the video and read all the comments. It's centered on the act of slapping you, triggering this entire situation. Now, everyone seems to think it's acceptable to scorn you so much. It has turned into such a mess. I'm truly sorry for what I've done. Catherine apologized, looking remorseful about the incident that happened yesterday. As Catherine had nothing to apologize for, I hastily said, "Even though I was deceived, I was the one who made the disrespectful remark. I'm truly sorry for my insulting words and for making you upset." With that, I apologized once again. Yet, Catherine said, "You were deceived by a friend, right? You obviously didn't seem to know what you were saying. I realized it when your friends burst into laughter as you returned to your table. Also, I should have been more composed because I was aware that your friends seemed quite intoxicated, and I know those people would do something terribly embarrassing under the influence of alcohol. Furthermore, I can't stand people who betray their friends like that. I regret slapping you now. I should have listened to your side. I'll help you stand up to your enemy." With that, Catherine took my arm. Though I was confused and overwhelmed by her words, Catherine pulled my arm and led me away. She didn't seem bothered at all. Once we reached the main street, she hailed a taxi and pushed me to the back seat, directing the driver to our destination. Inside the taxi, I was still in a state of confusion. We ended up at a law office. Here's my legal advisor. They helped me a lot in the States. Being an influencer involves a lot of tricky situations, so I rely on them frequently. Catherine explained with a smile as she introduced me to her lawyer. The lawyer, already briefed by Catherine, seemed to understand my situation. I understand your difficult situation. Leave it to me. I specialize in social media-related legal matters. The video has been posted anonymously by an individual, so we definitely have a winning case. With the lawyer's solid assurance, I began to feel hopeful. After signing a contract, the lawyer promptly started handling the case. A few days later, I visited the company with my lawyer, having an appointment. We were smoothly escorted to the president's office. As soon as we entered, the president, looking a bit embarrassed, guided us to our seats. "Mr. President, my client is claiming damages from the company," Mr. Johnson, my lawyer, said. The president, looking irritated, replied, "You seem to be making a big deal out of a matter we're still dealing with inquiries related to you. You must have some substantial basis for coming here with such claims, right?" The lawyer confidently began to explain. "Firstly, this involves unjust termination coupled with a lack of proper investigation. If the company terminates its employee, due process should be strictly followed. Additionally, the company is obliged to provide severance pay. However, in my case, none was complied with. These facts constitute an illegal dismissal. Thus, I claimed compensation," my lawyer continued. "Regarding the video on social media, it contains defamatory content. Although it was anonymously posted, I obtained the name and address of the person who posted it in my legal capacity. It turned out to be Mr. Johnson." Without a doubt, hearing the lawyer's explanation and realizing they were at a disadvantage with solid evidence against them, the president hastily called Mr. Johnson to the office. Upon entering the room, Mr. Johnson had a defiant look, as if to say, "Why are you here?" Initially brazen, as the lawyer reiterated the explanation and presented the evidence. He gradually turned pale upon learning he would face charges for posting the video without consent from Catherine and me. Mr. Johnson broke down and apologized profusely. "Your apologies mean nothing now. As I've said before, your actions are destroying my life. Why did you make me do such a thing? Didn't you think it would come back to haunt you?" I confronted Mr. Johnson once more. He then revealed everything. He hated me. He was jealous. He was troubled by his inability to perform well at work and found it painful to always be saved by me. Furthermore, I got married and was blessed with a child. For him, I was having a successful life, and it only fueled his insecurity and jealousy. That's why he set up a trap. It was a joke. He captured a perfect scene of me getting slapped and make a sensational video. So, he uploaded it for fun. That was his story. The lawyer interjected, "You claim it was just for fun, as if you meant no harm. However, you must have felt guilty when you posted that video anonymously. Your actions clearly had malicious intent and are unforgivable." Mr. Johnson had no room for rebuttal. "If you agree to the settlement we propose, we won't take this to court," the lawyer said. When he uttered those words, Mr. Johnson and the president hung their heads in defeat, realizing that a hopeless lawsuit would only tarnish the company's image further. The president refused to go to court. Consequently, Mr. Johnson and the company agreed to pay the compensation demanded by Kaffer and Eni. The legal action against the video spread on social media was swiftly handled by the lawyer, gradually leading to its resolution. Additionally, Catherine, in her new video, explicitly explained the facts surrounding the incident and informed the viewers that the man in the video was, in fact, a victim. He was forced to utter such an insulting phrase even though he didn't understand its meaning. Furthermore, she cautioned the viewers against making jokes that could harm others. Thanks to her message, people lost interest in the incident. Later, I met with Mr. Johnson to sign the legal documents regarding compensation for damages. Then, I told him, I know you were often casual in your approach and given leeway due to being the president's distant relative. However, your personality, brightness, and negotiation skills led to many successful contracts. While you may not have been as skilled in the job compared to others, your excellence in winning over clients and your exceptional communication skills were evident. You excelled at finding and retaining new clients. After that, either I or someone else would follow up, eventually leading to a contract. Without your sales abilities, we wouldn't have been able to secure half of those contracts. Hearing this, Mr. Johnson began weeping and said to me, I am very sorry. I know it's too late to change anything now. Mr. Johnson didn't lose his job because he was the president's distant relative, but rather because he was demoted to an ordinary employee at a distant branch. He now has to rebuild his job from scratch. The president apologized to me again and offered to rescind my dismissal, asking me to return to the company, but I politely declined. Hey Joseph, what's next on the schedule? Next, we have a meeting with the organizers of the cosplay event at the Anime Expo. Catherine, could you go through these 2 anime characters and pick your favorite attire during the ride? It would be great to consider at least 2 or 3 sets based on the other party's preferences. Okay. Oh, I wonder if I can dress up as Maddie's favorite character. I left my former company and joined the entertainment agency where Catherine works. My steadfast and serious character was well received at the new company, and now I am tasked with managing Catherine's work. After the company and Mr. Johnson paid me compensation and the case was closed, I moved to an apartment block with a high security system to stay with my wife and child, who were seeking temporary shelter there. My wife was overjoyed and relieved to see me safe. Meanwhile, Catherine became good friends with my wife and often visits our home. My wife was grateful for the connection with a famous influencer, but I felt somewhat uneasy about it. Recently, Catherine uploaded adorable moments of my daughter on her social media, which apparently went viral. Of course, to protect her privacy, she made sure her face was unrecognizable with digital stickers. My daughter, Maddie, adores Catherine, asking, "Is Catherine coming over today?" And Catherine seems to enjoy her company too. Social media can be a scary tool depending on how it's used, but it can also be a warm place where people from around the world can compliment your child. Above all, unlike an ordinary office worker, it has the potential to generate immense wealth, but it can also lead to losses. Because my daughter's video on Catherine's account went viral, we received a bonus from the company, and my wife and I were thrilled, praising Maddie. However, having once been burned by social media, we remain